Hey friends, this is Marilyn from tarotclarity.com. I'm a little emotional because I can't tell you how humbled I am by your remarks. So many of you. I never got so many comments. I never got so many comments, and I'm humbled to know that there's so much support out there. So thank you, from the bottom of my heart. I will release that video. I think I will. I watched it a couple times just to, there's one or two spots that I shouldn't have been as direct. But, and there's a whole part that I had in my notes that I forgot to discuss, and about civil rights. So I want to rectify that here. Hopefully you'll see both this and that. But bear in mind, always in general, and I've said this a couple of times, you should always read my descriptive area when I do a video, because you never know what I'm going to put in there, And sometimes if I neglect to mention something, I'll put it in there, etc. In addition to what I said about the red states, one of the things that's important to remember is that the majority of them are in the South. Now, there's some in the Midwest. There are. But the majority of them are in the South. And the South went red after Kennedy's death, and Lyndon B. Johnson was promoting and making happen the Civil Rights Bill. And when he did that, he lost his own state, which was Texas. They took off. And as did all the other southern states. If we look back historically on the United States, there's a number of times they made mistakes, no question. But when the Civil War ended and the South lost, a big historic problem was that we gave them concessions. We gave them permission to continue to wave their flags and to erect statues of their heroes. Well, their heroes were traitors to this country. That was the whole point of the war. And we allowed, well, I wasn't here 200 years ago, but you know what I'm saying. The country forgave it or overlooked it until we get to the point where we are today, where it just festers and festers and festers because no one shut that shit, excuse my language, down. No one shut that down. Now, I digress. I just wanted to mention that. I did because I didn't mention it, in my last video, which you haven't seen yet, but I will release it maybe this evening. I'll make it a premiere, so just look for the premiere and then you'll know that's what I'm talking about. Someone asked me to do a reading on the United States, Alexandra, for the next, was it for the United States or was it just for the world in general? I'm not sure. I don't know. But I will do it for the next 3 months. I guess we all have our eyes on the United States because it's our erratic behavior that'll make or break things. Now, the rest of the world, you have every reason to be upset and concerned, absolutely. If I lived anywhere in proximity to Putin, and I shouldn't even say his name, but if I lived anywhere in proximity to him, I'd be very concerned. If it's any consolation to you, you know who and his people are hell-bent on destroying this country first. You know who had 34 felonies. And he was going to prison. The only way not to go to prison was if he became president of the United States. So he didn't give a crap about becoming president of the United States. His only motivation was to do whatever it took to avoid prison, because that's where he was going. He was a convicted felon. He wasn't going to jail. He was going to prison. Other people, like you know who makes the cars and spaceships that blow up, and a bevy of other very rich people who belong to a cult, let's call it a cult, saw an opportunity to put him in a position of power because he was easy to control. Let's face it, he's an idiot. He's very easy to manipulate. He's probably got syphilis brain or late stage dementia or something. And I don't mean to be cruel to people with dementia. I certainly have had it in my family. I understand what a devastating thing it is. I don't even know if we can blame dementia, because he seems cognizant enough to spew hatred. So he can't be in advanced stages of anything except wickedness. But at any rate, these people, and if I can think of the name, I had it on the tip of my tongue and I forgot to write it down so I wouldn't forget it. I'll put his name, the name of the person I'm referring to, in this descriptive area, because if you haven't heard of that person, you need to know what's going on. They're a group of very wealthy people who got rich because they belonged to a good old boys club. I wouldn't be surprised if they could connect their lineage to the Daughters of the American Revolution or whatever the male equivalent is. They've been here probably a long time. And they're probably in that group. Well, I don't know. I can't speak in generalities, so I can't speak on what I'm thinking. But at any rate, they have motivation to destroy the U.S. because to them, it's making them rich. You know, they don't care if Social Security goes away. They don't care if Medicaid and Medicare go away. They don't need it because they're so rich. They can buy whatever they want. But it's people who have worked for 50 years of their lives to create a good life to hand down to their kids, you know. Those are the people who will suffer, you know. And I'm one of them. And I'm not alone. There's so many people just like me. And it's not so bad for me. I've had tough times in my life, for sure. But I have children and I have grandchildren, just like many of you do. And I feel I'm obligated to do what I can. Maybe some of the frustration is, why don't you do something? Well, the way our government is set up, there's 3 branches of government, so that no one branch has too much power because it has to go through checks and balances. That's a very simplified way of putting it. But he has declared that he is the only person who can make up a law, and whatever he says is the law. And he and the other piece of shit, you know who I mean. I'm sorry. I know, you know, some of you are offended by my curse words. I won't say any more. But he and the other one, I forget what I was going to say. See, I'm so all over the place. I don't remember what my point was, and if I remember it, I'll mention it. But he and that one and the others do want to destroy America. That's their number one objective. And they'll do it by getting rid of the infirmed, the weak people, and the elderly. Because you know, for those of you, I don't know if, who knows about Social Security or not, but it's something that you put into heavily for your entire life. I put in 50 years, maybe more, into Social Security. I haven't even begun to collect it yet because I've held off to be a later age, because the longer you put it off, the more you'll get. So I didn't even start to collect it when I was entitled to. I postponed it, which was my error now, because it's not in the books. I may never get it. But you put into it your entire life so that when you are retired, in case you don't have a 401k or money in the bank, which I don't have a 401k because the schools that I worked at, I didn't earn very much. So I counted on my Social Security, which won't be very much. It won't be a fraction of what I paid into it, but it's something. And so between that and what my husband has as a veteran with disability, we can live a decent life, but we both stand to lose all of that because we don't matter. And we're not the only people like that. So you cripple the elderly, which is what he's done. And then the people like my brother, or people who just who aren't like my brother, but barely break the poverty, they're in poverty, or they really need assistance. And he'll break that too. That's their mission. They said that Social Security is a Ponzi scheme, meaning we just leech off of society. That's not what it is. The only leeches on society are these billionaires who don't need to worry about social services because they've never paid taxes, and they've gotten rich with all these tax breaks. I mean, if I didn't have to pay taxes, I'd be rich too. You didn't come here for that. But I will post that video where I said a lot more than that. I said a lot more than that. And I will post the piece of caca that I was referencing, his movement, which is the club they all belong to. And yes, I try to post things in my post section to keep people aware, especially if you're an American citizen, because people want to know, why aren't you doing something? I had been talking about the 3 branches of government, and when who declared that only he and the other piece of can decide what's a law and what isn't a law. So he's branded the other branches of government ineffective. Now the only branch that appears to be doing its job, thank God, is the judicial branch, because he and his cronies keep getting shot down over and over and over for not following the Constitution. It doesn't mean much if he ignores it and disregards it. The Democrats can't do anything because they don't have the House. The entire government, even including the judicial branch to a large degree, are MAGA. So what they say goes. The people are limited. However, we outnumber them. And our boycotts have been effective. Our protests have been effective. Forget watching the evening news. You'll find nothing on the evening news. You've got to go on YouTube, and you've got to find channels like IHIP and the Meisas Touch. I'll put their names down below. Mary with his same last name. I won't say it. I wish she'd change her last name. There's a group of people. Rachel Maddow, AOC. Now you may say, oh, they're radicals. Well, guess what? If you don't think we need radicals, you're crazy. I've always kind of been liberal, very much so. But personally, I kind of live I tend to live a conservative life. I'm not, I don't do anything that's extravagant, but I support and have always lived my life to support liberal causes. And if you watch the other video, you'll see what I'm talking about. I spelled it out. But sometimes when I've seen some of them on the news before, I've said, oh boy, they're really acting up. But that's who we need now. We need people like that. Bernie Sanders, God bless him. He's the best president this country never had. He's 83 years old. And God, universe, keep him alive. Pray for him to stay alive. Because he's spreading the message and he's going into the red states because their leaders don't have the balls to face their constituents. In fact, some of them say, oh my God, this is the rudest crowd I've ever encountered. I'm not meeting with you anymore. That's how MAGA handles disappointment in their constituents. It's a mess. And I don't know if Europeans are seeing anything because our news people are acting like this is normal stuff. Oh, I don't even know why they call him the president. He shouldn't be called that. He should just be called out by name. But they're all playing this game like this is normal. And as Americans, we can't assume that it'll work itself out because it won't. It's not going to work itself out. It will only work itself out if we get involved. Now, I mentioned that MAGA owns Congress, and that they do. However, there's 3 upcoming elections where we can make a difference, and I posted it down below already in my post section. So just look across and find post and look at it. 3, where if we, the blue, can get enough voters to vote themselves in, we will have control of the Congress. 2 of those votes, those elections, are in Florida. They're both April 1st. One in District 1 and one in District 6. In District 1, the candidate up for election that has to win is Gay Valamont. In Florida, for District 6, the candidate who has to win is Josh, W-E-I-L. Excuse me, I think it's Wheel or Weil. I'm not sure how to say that name, but W-E-I-L. In New York, which is blue, but I think at the moment, perhaps there's a red person in this spot. I don't know. But it's District 21. Or he may be up for re-election. I don't know the details for any of these. I just know they're up for election and they have to get in order for them to take control. That's District 21, and that person's name is Blake Gendebian. As I mentioned, the names are down below, and that election is November 4th. So there's hope. Now, don't wait until April 1st. Well, it's getting there, so you're going to have to act quick. But don't wait until the date, November 4th, for example, and go and find out you don't have what you need to be registered to vote, because they're counting on all this. That's what voter suppression is all about. It's part of it. If you're a woman and you've been divorced, you need to have what it takes to prove who you are. Now, when I've been divorced and remarried, so whenever I have to do anything, and it hasn't just been because of the Republicans, it's just been in general the way it is, but they're working it. After I got divorced, I kept my first husband's surname. So now I had then, at that point, a discrepancy between my birth name and my husband's name. So whenever I went anywhere, I had to take my birth certificate, and I had to take the marriage certificate to prove that I was married. Then when I remarried and I took my second husband's name, okay, and this is stuff I have right in the drawer here, and every single woman who's in the United States of America needs to make it her business to get this stuff in order. So I have my birth certificate, not copies. You have to have the real deal. A copy of your birth certificate. You have to have a legit copy, not just like a photographic copy, not like a Xerox copy, like done through the state. A copy of your marriage name, that when you married. A copy of your frickin' divorce decree, which I have. And the copy of your new marriage license. I've been married twice, I said so. And I have all that. And I'm prepared to show it all. Now, of course, when you have all that, they don't ask you for it. But when you don't, they might. So when you go to vote, unless you are a seasoned regular voter and you vote all the time, I've never missed an election. Whatever I had to do, I always made sure I had what I needed to have. That's why I have all this stuff in my folder. But let me tell you something, women in particular. They're not about women having any rights. If you haven't figured that out yet, you need to wake up. So you have to have whatever it takes to bolster your identity. For real. All right, enough. So I'm going to flip the camera, and I know it's not like a deck like the Metelli, I love that deck. And it's not a deck like the Rosenwald, which is another deck I've really come to love because they're decks of the people. But I have become enamored by this like frou-frou deck. I guess it's a frou-frou deck only because it has some sharp, it's yielded some sharp meanings and interpretations. And I've only done a handful of readings and they were on the ball. And I think I need to see hope when I look at the cards, I just humor me on that. I will give you a genuine read. I will pretend as though I'm looking at a historic deck. I just have to look at beautiful. Oh, not that Metelli isn't beautiful, but it's a different kind of beauty. What I said in this portion of this video was the kind of temper I had when I did my other video that I will release later. The only difference is I was very angry. I was very angry. Anyway, let me flip the camera. And in addition to what I said about women, if you're just about to get married and you have your heart set on changing your name to your husband's name, I would highly recommend that you postpone that. I would suggest you keep your maiden name until all of this blows over and we're in a comfortable place. And if you want to change your name at that point, there's nothing to change your name. All you do is go everywhere and take the documents that you need to show them to prove that you want to change your name. I have married, something you probably don't know about me, but I have married at least 400 couples of all persuasions. And I provided all of them with documentation, like directions rather, not documentation, directions on how to go about changing your name. And for any of you who want that information, if you're on the fence about, getting married or whatever, or you're not that you're on the fence about getting married, about changing your name, you could be married 10 years, keep your maiden name all that time, and then just decide you want to change it to your husband's name. You could do that. And if you want, you can ask me, and if I can find the document on my computer, I'll send it to you, because I'm sure I never deleted it. I keep information. You never know when you'll need it. Okay. The next 3 months, I've asked the universe in my meditative place to please give me the wisdom and understanding that I need to bring forth a meaningful interpretation on what the next 3 months look like for the United States, but I expect to see things about the world. I left the what's it called? The word escapes me. Magnum opus? I apologize. I'm sure I'm saying it wrong. I left that card in here because I forgot to take it out. If it shows up, I'll just deal with it. I'll try my best to interpret it. Wow. The Magician. Boy, oh boy. Okay, so we have the Magician. This deck is the Fortuna, Opal, Omen. And I probably will need to rearrange these cards a few times. The Seeker, which traditionally is the Fool. Now, in this deck, I think their intent is for this card to represent the person asking the question and how everything will relate to that person. But I'm disregarding that because I'm not asking for myself. I'm asking for us collectively. So this card can represent all of us collectively or none of us at all and just represent the Fool. But in this deck, it is called the Seeker. So we'll bear that in mind. Now it's pointing up, and there's not a top level. There's not a top level here. So it would be better if there was a position on top of it. But we'll see how things play out. We have 9 coins. I'm going to do my signature spread because I'm going to give this all I got. 8 of batons, so this is fire. Front and center in the middle. Queen of talismans in this deck, that's the coins. Judgment. And the bottom row, we have another coin. So we have 1, 2, 3 coins. 2 triumph cards. 3 triumph cards, excuse me. 4 triumph cards. With the Wheel of Fortune, that is called Fortuna. And we have the Sun. Wow. Okay. Well, I wouldn't get too excited. Although it's a positive card. But I'm just not even letting myself. I'm going to push these guys up here a bit. I'll fix that later. Let me go off camera and fix all this, and I'll come back with the Quint cards. Alrighty. I have laid all the cards. I had to, since the Wheel of Fortune or Fortuna was already in play in the initial spread, I had to pick another Fortuna from another deck, another Wheel of Fortune or Fortuna from another Fortuna deck, which is what I did. Now, before I get into interpreting this spread, there's a couple things that hit me right away. Front and center of the core 9, we have the Queen of Coins. Now, I tend to look at the center card, first. I may not always comment on it first, but I'll look at it first. And I think it's very telling that it's about women in positions of power. And it could be about money. Now, when I just, went off to explain why women in particular in the United States have to cover their bases, and don't let that stop you from voting. Between now and April 1st, if you don't have what you think you need to have to go to vote, do it anyway. Go show up anyway. And if it's possible to run around to your, to get those things, try it. But don't let that stop you from showing up to vote. Let them turn you away. But, if it's possible to get those things in time you certainly have plenty of time for November 4th, but I'd still do it immediately. And they may not turn you away. It all depends. So I'm just saying, have what you need just in case. Just have every possible thing they could turn you away for just in case. Anyway, I think it speaks to women. We make a difference, and we should not underestimate our power, especially purchase power, and just being in the world. The suit of coins is about earth. It's about land. It's about physical qualities, and so I think we make the difference, and we have to be concerned about ourselves, because nobody really will. The other thing that I think is extremely interesting is the quint cards for the second and third row. One is the Lover card, and one is the Devil card. And okay, you may say, why'd she use this deck? It's so frou-frou. But I think it's a very telling thing that these two cards appear in proximity like this to one another. Because what is disguised as love, such as, their religious BS, or I got your back, I'm fighting for you, is really evil disguising itself as love. That's exactly how I'm hit with this. And I may not have been hit with that had it been any other deck. But this deck, don't sell it short, because I've gotten some poignant understandings from this deck, surprisingly. And I ignore the astrology stuff because it doesn't make sense to me. Even when I looked it up, I discussed this in my video that I will be sharing later, the one where I rant. I did a cheat sheet, and I did a little bit of homework, enough to understand that I'll never understand. And I discussed it in that video. So I disregard those things. But taking what I understand about a card and then understanding or looking at their image for the meaning, how can one not be struck by, a wolf in sheep's clothing? Something masquerading as love, but it's not. Masquerading as one thing, but not being that thing. In fact, being wicked. Another thing I want to mention, especially if you're learning tarot, we're all at different levels of learning here. Some people are veterans, they've been interpreting cards as long as I have, or at least 20 years. And some people have been here, they want to learn. So sometimes we all forget. Sometimes things need to be pointed out to me too, that I forget, because my memory isn't what it used to be. I think we can all attest to that. But when you see in the core spread that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of 9 cards are from the higher order of cards. 5 out of 9 cards are from the Triumph suit. Now, that can suggest that the stakes are high. It could suggest a few things depending on your understanding of what happens when a lot of Triumph cards show up in your spread. Now, it's natural that we'd have Triumph cards, of course, as the end caps and for the final overall read, because the quints can only be Triumph cards. But in the core 9, for there to be 5 out of 9 being a Triumph card, kind of suggests that the stakes are high. What do we have 2 of? Now, these I mentioned are very similar, okay? And they masquerade as the same thing, okay? But we also have 2 wheels of fortune. And in this deck, it's called Fortuna, luck, chance. So I'm encouraged to see it appearing twice, because if we're the seeker, right? If we're the collective seeker, one of the things that shows up in that row is a change of fortune, a change of luck. It's very encouraging. And remember, the window on this, I built into it when I asked the question, was 3 months. But we'll also notice that in the row that represents the evildoers, we also have the Wheel of Fortune. So we have it for ourselves, and we have it for he, she, and they, because there's more than one of them. So that's interesting also, because the Wheels of Fortune will change for all of us. There will be an ebb and flow. I don't see any moon card to suggest ebb and flow. But I'm using that word loosely. There's going to be fluctuation in their camp and some fluctuation in our camp. We'll have a change of luck. They'll have changes of luck. Now, I'm encouraged to see that they've had some unfortunate changes of luck in recent days, because, the other one, who, what can we call him? I don't want to call him, I'm like thinking of like rearranging his letters in his name. I don't want to call him Noel, because that's a beautiful woman's name, and I don't want to ruin a woman's name. I don't want to call him Leon, because that's way too dignified a name. So let me see if there's something else I can come out. There's Olen. Is that too hard to remember if we call him Olen? We might call him Olen. He has had, or if you can come up with a better suggestion, let me know, and that's what we'll use here. We call you-know-who here. But I can't call the other one by his name either. But his stocks have tanked, so much so that the you-know-who has used the White House driveway as a used car salesman would say, "Hey, come and buy one of these cars," which is illegal, as you know what. But it's bad enough. His stocks have now. Okay, it's hard to imagine having $400 billion and now you're only worth $200 billion. Oh my God, I feel so sorry for him. But in his world, he's a failure, So you got to keep it going. We got to keep it going. I was never in a position to own one of his cars. We do have an electric car, but we don't have one that costs that much. And I'm glad we never aspired to have them, because they're ugly. Oh my God, are they the ugliest cars you ever seen? Oh my God. But if I had one, that thing would never leave the driveway. It would never leave the garage. I would never let anybody in my neighborhood know I had it, number one. So I feel bad for everyone who's lost money on that. But some people are writing things against him on the side, getting it, professionally painted on the side of their car, a message to him that they're not in approval. They're not in a position to get rid of their car, but they're in a position to make a statement, so maybe they can have something painted on their car. Certainly, not buying his stock and whatever we've been doing collectively. I haven't done anything with his stock because I don't have any, and I don't have any of his products. But whatever we can collectively continue to do it, because it's working. And that falls right under women power, right? Now let's look at the row suggesting women power. I've mentioned it several times. For me, the number 8 means organization. It means order, lack of chaos, organized stuff, right? So next to the woman, I see it as women organizing to make announcements, to bring things to light. You know, the judgment card can mean a few things. I know that the astrological sign uses, I guess, Pluto to represent it, which, let me see what the cheat sheet on Pluto says. Death, rebirth. You know, okay, so technically you die and then you're judged, you know. But I don't see this card as meaning death, you know. It means being held accountable, though, or, you know, having to, or bringing forth information. And I think in this context of this question with the women who are organized can do something, can make some type of statement. And then we have, you know, the Lover card. That is being, you know, that is for us, you know, in this row, but also there's a play here. It's possible that some women have been indoctrinated by, I'm going to say it, religious stuff, you know. There's a reason the forefathers wanted separation of church and state. There's no room for it. There's no room for it. There is no state religion. That's the point. That was why those original people came over here. Besides the indigenous people, the original people. I'm talking about the original Europeans. That's why they came here, to escape persecution. Now, they were whack jobs, I think, from what I understand. Their puritanical minds were kind of not healthy. But guess what? Some of them are their descendants. Some of the evil ones are their descendants. They've been around a long time. They've accrued a lot of money. And they've done it under the window of being good Christians. For those of you who are American, we all know Chick-fil-A is a Christian outfit, you know, super religious, you know, and many of us I haven't been to a Chick-fil-A probably since before I had children. So we're going back 40 years because they're so freaking religious in their hypocrisy, you know, that I just can't give them my money. And if you're not the kind of person to just generally boycott companies that don't stand with humanity, this is a good time. This is a good wake-up call to take that stand. Because, let me finish my story. Some of you may know this story already. A couple weeks ago, the owner of Chick-fil-A, who can't have the business open on Sunday because it's an offense against God. Well, now we know why he's closed it on Sundays. Because on one particular Sunday, a few weeks ago, he took that opportunity to travel 400 miles to meet with a 15-year-old youth of unknown gender. And the father walked in to find them engaged in what essentially was a molestation of the youth. We don't know if it was a male or female, which is immaterial, but this is what these people who masquerade as religious, this is what they're about. So especially if you're a woman, you need your eyes to be awakened. You need to wake up. If you're a woman who's fallen for this BS, right? You know, if you respond to the diamond crucifixes and you wear the crucifix as your badge of honor, and there's nothing wrong with showing in jewelry form. I'm not criticizing that. But there is something wrong when you have a 6-inch diamond crucifix on your neck and you're a big hypocrite. There's something wrong with that. This row can mean a wake-up call for all women. It could be a wake-up call for women to take a stand, to be more involved. Make sure you have your ducks and things in order. Be organized, right? Make a difference. But it can also be representing women who are lulled by this false sense of sheep and devils, of wolf and sheep's clothing. Be an eye awakener for them. These people are not who they pretend to be. You know? Why do you think they hate? What's hate? Hate is when you don't understand something, perhaps. I don't know if that's hate. I think that's fear. Fear is when you don't understand something, and because you respond in fear, you want to protect yourself. Hate is something different. I think hate is when you hate yourself and you see it being represented freely by another individual, but you can't express that freely, so you hate them because you resent them. This could be another aspect of what we have here, right? They hate what they see in themselves, so nobody else can have it. Now, I am discouraged greatly by the Sun card in the row of the devil because it follows the wheel or the Fortuna card. I guess it's not exactly the Wheel of Fortune. It shows the lemniscate, the continuation of things. But traditionally, the card means a change of luck. Things can change on a dime. Both halves, if we look at this as an hourglass, both halves of this lemniscate, if we look at it as an hourglass, has equal proportion of stuff. So sometimes the chips are up, sometimes the chips are down, but it doesn't seem to matter much. I haven't reconciled exactly how I feel about this particular Fortuna. If any of you have good ideas or insights. We also see suggestion of the phases of the moon. I think those might be the moon. Six coins, another card. I'm looking at the evil one's row. So we're looking at 3 months. So here I'm seeing 6 is a perfect number. It's a good number. It's a healthy number. Why is it appearing in their row? The ball seems to be in their court. There's a change of fortune for the better. Could it be for the better? How could it get better for them? They're already doing so much. But these cards play, don't they? You know, these cards play together like they're shining. You know, they're hiding under the look of being beautiful and innocent and lovely in a partner. It also falls under the women. The women waking up, women making announcements or shouting from the rooftops, or in the other case, because we can see it as meaning more than one thing, this can represent more than one type of woman. It can represent womanhood in general, the women who need to wake up and the women who need to take a stand and do what they got to do, and then the women who are already organized. But we do have to become organized, and we do have to take a stand. And we have to wake up a little bit, some of us, not all of us, and some men too. Men who have any women in your lives, if you're watching this and you're not MAGA, or especially if you are, and you kind of just want to see what's going on with people who aren't, This is what we're thinking, and you need to support your women, even more so. My husband is oh my God, my husband's a saint. He puts up with me. He's a wonderful man. But even now and then, I have to set him straight. He'll be 80 years old, so he's kind of old school. Oh, he's a very liberal thinker, so don't worry about that. But every now and then, I got to say, hey, are you serious? And then he laughs, So if you're a gentleman, you have to be aware that, we need your support. I'll have to come back to this row to understand what exactly. I hate to leave it on a note that within 3 months they'll be gaining power, or because this suggests good solid standing, a change of fortune, and then for the better. So how could a change of fortune from a good solid standing go to the better, unless it's the better of mankind? But I don't know, because it's followed by the devil card, which is evilness. So I have to think about this a little bit. I'm not exactly sure how to understand it. I think the women are a problem for them. That's probably their biggest obstacle, because women are fighting, Let's take a look at the top row. We have the Magician. And I have seen the sinister side of this card, this Magician card, in this deck and in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck and another holographic deck. If any of you have ever seen my, I've done a number of videos on the Idaho 4 students' Redrum. You know what I mean when I say Redrum, right? And when that card appeared in the spread, I got a surge through me of such evil wickedness that I had to drop the card. And when I did a reading the other day, those of you may have seen me doing it, where there was manipulation of the scene from Paul Byrne's death, the Jean Harlow story, her husband. I got a chill for that too. And I got a chill, more importantly, when I did the reading the other day on Elizabeth Short's murder. Oh, I said the word, I didn't mean to. On Elizabeth Short's Redrum, right? Because this image right here, when I was talking about her, it looked just the way her body was left, in 2 sections with her arms over her head. So this card now is beginning to mean something more than just manipulation and trickery. It's taken on another dimension in my older years as being a certain wickedness. And look where it falls. Catacorner, right? Cornered by the wicked card. So you got to look at all the cards in relation to one another and how they feed off of one another. I know they're far apart from one another, but they share a cornerstone. This is a cornerstone, and this is directly, diagonal from it. So I think it's possible that this still represents wickedness afoot that we're not seeing clearly. What comes next? The Seeker. Well, that's us, right? This deck, we're the fool. Collectively, we're the fool. Have we been deceived? Absolutely. Are we waking up? Yeah, I think so. I think the 9 coins not necessarily traditionally means wake up, but it means we have power. 9 coins is achievement in the practical world, in the material world. I think we have to use whatever power we have to bust the wickedness. We have to take chances. We have to take risks. We can't assume someone's going to save us. No one's going to save us. I got news for you. The entire Congress is shot. And we're assuming and hoping that in April 1st and November, whatever the date was, November 4th or November 6th, that those people will be voted in. But what if they take away the right to vote? What if that's removed from us? We can't assume that someone else is going to take care of things for us. We outnumber them, and whatever we're doing now, we need to do more. Whatever voice you have or whatever ability you have to show up, boycott, speak. I mean, Olan, what did I say his name is? Omen? Omen is having a fit that he's only worth $200 billion instead of the $4. That's too bad, Omen. But that's how superficial they are. It's all about having the most. It's all about having the most. We have the most. We have 9 coins in our court. We can continue to manipulate things, and we have to. Okay, if you want to say, well, what's the next 3 months? What's it about? It's about the fight. The fight isn't going to wrap itself up in 3 months. In fact, we just are going to get started. We have to manipulate the system. We have to take chances and take a stand. We have more collective power than we think we do. We can change things. Remember, this was the quint card for that row. We can change things. They're manipulating and changing things, and they think, this could be their perspective. They think they're doing really great. But maybe they're not doing as great as they think they are. It looks good for them because they have the upper hand. So even if they take a tumble and they're only worth $200 billion instead of $400 billion, they still have the upper hand. But let them deceive themselves. Let them deceive themselves. As long as we take a stand collectively, as long as we unite, and women, I'm talking to us because we have the most to lose. We all have everything to lose. We all do. I don't mean to suggest that men have anything to lose. I'm talking about in the United States with things so against women here. I'm just talking about us here. Other women in other countries perhaps don't face that, although I think there's plenty of countries where women don't have the upper hand and they're suppressed in ways considerably worse than we have been. So I'm not trying to say poor me, or poor women, but as long as we have a voice and as long as we have power, girls, we have to use it. Now, the final outcome card is the Hermit. Now, I haven't been able to understand what's going on here, and the book gives us no explanation. I think in some ways I can see this as a boat coming forth with the water, right, splashing, and I can also see it as a hot air balloon rising above a situation. But the card is the Hermit. I think they wanted to give this card a lot of flash because I think they were getting at the enlightenment of the lantern, right? So I get that maybe, a boat, has a lantern on it at some spot so things can see it, on the water. Perhaps a hot air balloon. Maybe this is the gas or the fire in the hot air balloon that gives light. I don't know exactly what they're getting at here. But we can keep that in mind. But it comes, in a row of announcement or things being made clear. There's a lot of cards that suggest things being made clear. The sun could suggest, it looks, on the surface that things are, going to turn their way in a better way for them. But falling under the Judgment card, it could also suggest that their way can change where they're exposed. It could be that way too, that they're exposed. Now that would be a very, very, very optimistic turn for us. But maybe this quadrant here is hopeful because maybe more people will start to see that they're all the good people who, all the people who think they're being religious and they think they're living righteous lives. Don't be fooled into believing that everybody who pretends to be that is that. And this card being there too is another card of shedding light on. So we have we have two mirrors, for goodness sakes, two mirrors of seeing things, right? If we just take away the meaning of the card from what I already just said, because remember, tarot cards can mean more than one thing at the same time. This quadrant of cards right here, all of them suggest seeing things clearly, things being brought to the surface, things being revealed, if you want to look at the sun in that way. So I think it could be that we all have to wisen up. We all have to wake up, and we have to see what's happening. We can't, and we have to participate. We have to participate. We can't not be registered to vote. We have to do what it takes to be a responsible citizen of the world. And particularly if we live in the United States of America, we can't sit out the next elections. We should be grateful if we even have elections. Some of us need to hear the wake-up call that we may not have elections anymore. We're dealing with fascism. We're dealing with corruption like you can't even imagine in your worst nightmare. That's the kind of corruption that we're confronted with. We're naive to believe that, the government will work itself out. This can't be happening. It is happening. It's happening. That's it. It's happening. And we can win on a wing and a prayer if we become involved. Now, I don't know if this helped anybody in imagining what the next 3 months is going to look like. I just see it as it's probably going to be more of the same. It's going to be a battle. There may be things that are being brought to light. Maybe more people will be awoken. And I know the word woke is a word that's designated for libtards, because that's the very sophisticated way that people with hate in their hearts see liberal thinkers. What does liberal mean? What does liberal mean? Liberal means appreciation for all things, right? Since when is a liberal person a person of diminutive intelligence because they give a shit about another human being? And I lied, I cursed again, I'm sorry. Since when is that a bad word? When is that something to be made fun of? So some of those people need to wake up, okay? They need to be exposed. More of us have to recognize that we're talking about serious wickedness in the next 3 months. And we have to continue to organize. Women have to do what women have to do. Men have to do what men have to do. And hopefully, some of what I said made sense and gives us hope and gives us direction to what we can and need to do. So this has been a pretty long video, even for me. Sometimes I, get to like the 45-minute or the hour mark. I think the video that I didn't release yet was about an hour as well. Thank you very much for hanging in there. And again, thank you so much for all the beautiful things you've said in support and kindness, just the kindness. I appreciate it with everything I have. And thank you. Until next time, friends, peace, stay well, be kind.